Hi, my name is Sarah. My topic today will be social learning in goats. For this video, I will be using my observations from Amber Acres Goat Dairy, which is a goat farm in central Wisconsin. The farm has been raising goats for the past 15 years and became a commercial goat dairy in 2012. I have worked there for several years and been interacting with and observing goats in various ways because of this. When it comes to psychology, we often think of studying the human psyche and behaviors, but of course there have been many studies done using animals. Understanding an animal's psychology can help caretakers keep the animals productive and healthy. In a commercial dairy setting, quick learning skills are essential in the animals because confusion about novel scenarios can lead to stress and fear. Over a prolonged period, this stress can affect an animal's productivity, so it is in the farmer's best interest to train the animals as quickly and effectively as possible. Goats respond well to training through reward and punishment, as shown by this study. They learn more quickly when they are exposed to other goats performing desired behaviors, which leads to how social learning is used to train goats. Social learning is defined as when one organism learns by watching the actions of another organism. Goats are able to learn by observing and copying each other's behavior. However, goats do not think in as complex of ways as humans, so social learning may be less easy to observe or may take longer. One confounding factor in discerning what exactly qualifies as social learning is the difficulty distinguishing between instinctive behavior and learned behavior. Goats are curious and playful creatures who perform a lot of instinctive behaviors without having to observe others. These activities include tasting novel objects, climbing, and greedily hoarding as much food as possible. They will also do these behaviors after observing another goat do them, but that doesn't necessarily qualify as learning because they aren't doing it consistently. I was able to make some more accurate observations by testing goats on whether they would consistently perform two tasks: climbing a staircase to a feeder and walking through a gate on command. Since all the lactating does on the farm were required to perform these actions daily, many were already trained and expected to receive a reward in the form of food when they successfully completed both of these actions. There were several goats who were new to the barn and they were not trained to perform the actions, so I divided these goats into my control group and my test group. The test group was allowed to observe previously trained goats and the control group was not. All goats in the control group were taught to climb the stairs and go through the gate on command, with a simple reward system being given food upon successfully completing the desired action. Most goats in the control group were able to reliably perform the desired actions within about 2 weeks of continuous reinforcement. I should note here that while my observations and assumptions have proved accurate for training purposes, my methods do not meet all the criteria of the scientific method, so to establish any significant results, I would have to create a more valid and well-documented study. But anyway, I found that a goat's capacity to learn behaviors was strongly correlated to how it had been raised. There are 3 basic ways to raise a goat. It can be raised with its mother, whether with other goats in a herd or not. It can be raised without its mother, and therefore the human is its primary caretaker, but still with access to other goats. And it can be raised in isolation from other goats with just a human caretaker. Theoretically, there's the 4th way that you could raise a goat with a machine or something, which would leave it isolated from both humans and goats, but I've never actually observed this, so for the purposes of my observations, I just left it out. The most natural method is, of course, to allow a mother goat to raise her kids. Goats raised in this way develop very strong social identities within the group and will hesitate to stray from the herd. They are also very suspicious of human interaction and generally make very bad pets. When I observed goats performing the 2 tasks of walking through a gate on command and climbing stairs to be fed, they were willing enough to perform the actions when the other goats were present, but their fear of human interaction significantly impeded their learning, resulting in stress for both the goat and the handler. These goats performed more slowly than the control group, sometimes taking as much as 2 months to learn how to simply walk through the gate when their name was called. This I don't think is so much caused by an inability to copy other goats' behavior, but more because they were intimidated by a human standing on the other side of the gate. On the other hand, Goats raised in isolation from other goats with only a human caretaker failed to develop a strong social identity within the herd. These goats were generally very friendly and venturous. They had no qualms about walking up to a human, but they failed to learn by copying other goats' behavior, presumably because they didn't have strong social ties to the group. These goats performed pretty similarly to the control group, which isn't surprising because if they were not copying the other goats' behavior and making assumptions about it, it's not very likely that social learning would increase the speed of learning for them. The final group of goats, which were taken from their mothers and cared for by a human, but were still able to interact with goats of either the same or various ages, were the most skilled at social learning compared to the control group. These goats had the necessary social skills to observe and copy the already trained goats, but were not impeded by their fear of humans and thus learned more quickly than any of the other goats. While these observations give a glimpse into the possibility of social learning in goats, a more careful analysis would have to be done to confirm any assumptions. However, some conclusions that I use as I work to train goats to be productive members of society is that goats in a dairy environment are most able to adapt to expectations if they have relative ease interacting with both goats and humans. The most reliable method of accomplishing this is to isolate the kids from their mothers within a week of birth, but still keep them in a herd of goats. While this might not seem like the most natural or, according to PETA, humane method, it pays off in the long run because the kids' goats quickly adapt to their human caretakers, which makes them much more friendly, and they are much less stressed by fear of humans later in life. Since social status is such an important aspect of a goat's life and significantly impacts social learning, it is also important for goats to be raised with other goats. This will lead them to be most effective at learning the tasks that they're required to do. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.